Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Manning. Welcome back for Lesson 5. We are reading Chapter 5 of The Road to Freedom. Today, we're learning about how to determine the meaning of words and phrases and how they're basically meant to be in the text. Words can have multiple meanings. You can say it in one context and then it be completely interpreted in a different context. So, for us to do that, what we have to do and what we do in our everyday life is we think about what's going on. So, we have to think of the story as a whole, everything that we've read so far, to what they possibly might be meaning. And a good example of that would be the word possum yesterday. Um, it didn't make sense that she was talking about a real live possum because we are not reading a story about possums, we're not talking about it. And then you also have to use text evidence with things that are around the word. So in the with the word possum yesterday, she wasn't talking about a possum. She didn't see a possum. There wasn't a story about a possum. So, using what we know from our story and text evidence from what's directly around the word, we can help determine the meaning of the words and phrases. Our by the way words or BTW words for today, our first one is Quaker. It's a Christian group and they're pretty well known for being against any type of violence or war. And they were the ones who often were helping the slaves escape to the north. So I included the Quaker Oats container right here because the picture of this person on here is what we typically see, especially in books and in movies, Quakers dressing like. They were a very conservative group. Our next word is enslave, and it's a verb, so that means a thing that you do, and it means that you're making a person a slave. So enslave is an action that you would do to treat someone like a slave. And then we have the Underground Railroad. It's a system of people and businesses that secretly helped slaves or enslaved people escape to Canada and northern states. So when I was a young kid learning about the Underground Railroad, I never understood because I was always picturing this word railroad and I thought that they would get on a secret train, but it was an underground train. But really, what it just meant was it was a system of people who, like the Quakers, who didn't believe in slavery. And so they would offer people a safe house or something to some food for them or somewhere to hide so that way they could escape the slave catchers. So it's not an actual railroad, it's just people and businesses that were willing to help. So while we're reading chapter 5, I want you to pay attention to the details that the author chooses to include because the author puts in every bit of text with a purpose. So, how do they help you understand what it was like for enslaved people or how they were treated once they tried to escape? So I'm going to take an example from earlier in our story, and I would definitely talk about the dog catchers. That would be an example that the author included, so that way I, as the reader, knew that they sent dogs to chase after them and find them, so they were never safe. They could find their scent. So you're going to be looking in chapter 5 and seeing what details the author includes. The house was warm. The old woman helped us undress and hung our clothes up to dry. After days of eating ash cake, her hot, salty stew warmed my insides. Her kindly face looked worried as she checked my feet for cuts, wrapping a soft bandage where a rock had cut deep. She said she was a Quaker. I'd never heard of a Quaker before, but I figured they must be mighty kind folk to help people run from slavery. We believe it is wrong for one person to enslave another, she explained. While we ate, she told us her house was a station on the Underground Railroad. Only this railroad had no tracks, no trains, and no tracks. Its conductors were people who thought slavery was wrong and wanted to help runaways. She didn't know how many people she'd helped get to the north. Not enough, she said sadly. Suddenly we heard horses outside. Hurry, the old woman whispered. She moved the table and rug to the side and pulled on the latch on the floor. Go quickly, she said, handing us our clothes. We made our way down steps into a small space beneath the floorboards. The space was so small we could hardly stand, and as soon as we were down, she shut the door and pulled the rug and table on top, enclosing us in darkness. A group of men talked loudly, banging on the door. "Open up!" deep voices yelled. "Give an old woman a chance to gather herself," she said, slowly shuffling toward the door. We heard voices above us, angry and mean. I heard glass break and a chair knocked over. But I've not seen any runaways," the woman said. More voices, and then a door slammed. We waited in the dark, staring up at the door until the rug and table moved away and slats of light crept through. "It's not safe," the woman said to Mama. Her face was as sad as my heart. "Stay the night, and tomorrow you'll move to another station." Again, me and Mama slept, curled up together on a blanket, but our bellies were full and we were warm. In my sleep, I dreamed of barking dogs and the master. We woke when the morning light crept through the open door. Come quickly," the woman said. "A friend outside will take you farther." She handed me boots that were worn, but strong and sturdy. "You'll be needing these for the cold up north," she smiled. "Peace be with you both." We hurried to the waiting wagon. The driver nodded to the pile of potatoes in the back. He moved them aside and we lay flat. He covered us with a scratchy burlap cloth and piled the potatoes on top. Then I heard the snap of the reins and we were off. So for our vocab, our first word is conductor on page 28. So let's read the sentence. Its conductors were people who thought slavery was wrong and wanted to help runaways. So I have that word people. Conductors were people. So I know that a conductor is a person, and it's a person who thought slavery was wrong. So the old woman with a quilt is obviously a conductor, but what's she a conductor of? So we have to kind of think about what's already going on in our story. She's talking about a station on the Underground Railroad. It has no trains, no tracks. So she's talking about the Underground Railroad. The station is actually the house that they're staying in. This train that they're talking, or there's no train for the Underground Railroad. There's no tracks, and the conductors are not actual conductors. And in this case, conductor, or in most cases, a conductor is who drives the train. But in this case, the conductors are the people who are helping them. And our next word is shuffling. "Give an old woman a chance to gather herself," she said, slowly shuffling towards the door. So again, this is not going to be a word that we can determine if we don't think about what's happening in the story at that time. So what's actually going on is they are hiding in the baseboards or underneath the house, and she has just, opened up this hole in her home, put them down there, and then covered it with a rug, covered it with a table, and now she's slowly moving towards the door. But this is describing how she's moving, and she's not picking up her feet. But really, we know as readers that it's because she's trying to give herself some time to kind of calm down, and also for them to get quiet down there before she lets these men in. Because again, just like with the slave catchers and the dogs, they're hiding and they have to stay quiet, just like a game of hide and seek, but it's life and death. So how do you think the old woman feels about Emma, and what text evidence supports this? So I took straight from the text, and this is towards the end of the chapter when the old woman is showing them the wagon that they're going to get on. So you're going to kind of look through the text and find out what you think that how the old woman feels about Emma. And so you're going to kind of include the text evidence, but then also put it in your own words or your thoughts, what you decided after reading that part of the text. We said at the beginning that we were going to talk about the words that the author chooses and the meaning behind them. So let's first look at this white page here. I never heard of a Quaker before, but I figured they must be mighty kind folk to help people run from slavery. So she's using this phrase, mighty kind folk, and the author includes this instead of just saying they must be nice to help people run from slavery, because it kind of gives you a little bit more insight into who Emma is as a character. It's a phrase that would be used by somebody who maybe lived in the country, maybe somebody who wasn't as well educated, it's something that you would hear, a turn of phrase that you would kind of hear to describe people. And then over here in this second page, she describes the group of men as talking loudly and they're banging on the door. The voices above are angry and mean. And this kind of gives you an idea of the tone of what is going on. So, like, as you're reading this, because you hear that the men are talking loudly and banging, and you see this open up, and the more you read, you realize that they're not saying, open up in a high pitched, excited voice. They're saying, open up in kind of a scary sense. And then you also can use other parts of the text. Let's look at over here when they're at the old woman's house and they're getting food inside their belly, they have somewhere to be that's warm, they're not outside anymore. The author chose to make sure that the book page was in white, but over here when they're hiding and it's scary, it's in black, and that kind of helps convey the meaning of what's going on in the story. So it's more than just what is happening in the story, it's all of the word choices that the author chooses to include, as well as some of the pictures that they choose. And even we now know the color of the page can kind of give off a vibe of what is going on in the story. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you again soon for chapter 6. Bye.